Survivor Series 2016 is coming up this weekend. Let's predict this thing. What is up? GoodMicWork back at you. We are just days away from the Survivor Series pay-per-view coming up this weekend, and we have got a lot to talk about here in episode 389. I'm going to predict the entire Survivor Series pay-per-view, as well as give a quick review of both go-home shows for Raw and SmackDown. Very big episodes on both. We had the big confrontation with Goldberg and Lesnar on Raw, and it was the 900th episode of SmackDown, including returns from Edge and The Undertaker. In addition to that, I will also predict the NXT TAKEOVER show this coming Saturday from Toronto, and if there's time, I'll get into some news on Joey Styles and Vader as well. Let's not waste any time, because this is probably going to be a pretty long commentary, and I want to start by discussing Raw. Now, I'm not going to review match by match either one of these shows. I'm just going to kind of give some general opinions on them. Raw, I have to say, was a good show, and the crowd was really hot for a lot of this. There was a few moments where they were very dead as well. But I think Raw would be so much better if it was 2 hours. I've been saying that a lot lately, but I think this past week's Monday Night Raw was a perfect example of that because it had some really good stuff on there. And there were a few times throughout the show that the crowd was so jacked you thought the roof was going to blow off that building. And I think if they combined all of that good stuff into a 2-hour block, it would have made the show overall a lot better because a lot of people were commenting on Twitter that they were bored, that they were falling asleep, that this Raw sucks. But then when I looked around at some of the good things they had, it was pretty decent. The problem is the show was just long and the fans get tired, and it's hard to pay attention for that amount of time, especially when there are so many dead spots in between, so many commercial breaks, so much stupid shit in between all the good shit, that it just makes the show overall come off as boring, even though it really wasn't. I have to say, I've really enjoyed the build for Survivor Series this year. It has a little bit more important of a feel to it. I cannot remember being happy with a Survivor Series pay-per-view in a long time. So the fact that we have the brand split now and there seems like there's a little bit more at stake and you've kind of got a Raw versus SmackDown thing going on. Plus it gives everybody a break from their regular programs. You know, we don't have a WWE title match or a Universal title match on the show, which is nice. Gives both champions a break so they don't have to keep jumping into another feud or another match pay-per-view after pay-per-view after pay-per-view. It's kind of nice just to take a month off and not have to worry about championship feuds, at least for right now. And I think the way they've been setting up a lot of these matches has been pretty decent, to be honest, on both shows. So I'm actually very, very optimistic for Survivor Series because, look, it can't get any worse, right? Haven't the last 5 or 6 or possibly more Survivor Series completely sucked ass? So at least this is one that has potential to have some major things take place on it. Now, Raw kind of opened with Stephanie and Mick Foley in the ring, and they had the entire Raw roster on the stage. The whole segment felt a little bit pointless. It was basically just used as a way to announce matches for the rest of the night and give the roster a little bit of a motivational speech heading into Survivor Series. And some of the matches they made, I guess, were an attempt to, create solidarity between some teammates that have issues with each other. So Stephanie and Mick went on to make a Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens tag team taking on Cesaro and Sheamus. And then Stephanie added that she would put Charlotte and Sasha together in a tag team to take on Alicia Fox and Nia Jax. The segment had a couple of funny moments, too. Mick Foley was doing like the Enzo dance, the Running Man dance or whatever, and that was very disturbing to see. And he even kind of botched a line. I think he jumped ahead of the script a little bit, because as soon as he announced the Roman and Owens versus Cesaro and Sheamus match, he was about to say, that match starts right now, and Stephanie kind of cuts him off. Hold on, we're not done yet. Got one more match to announce. Now, as far as those matches that they made, Owens and Roman Reigns did beat Cesaro and Sheamus. Now, Roman wound up kind of dragging Owens' lifeless body on top of Sheamus, but they're still not really getting along, but they did pick up a victory in the tag team match. One of the other matches that Mick Foley and Stephanie made was a 6-man match with Chris Jericho, Seth Rollins, and Braun Strowman taking on the New Day. And backstage, they did a little segment where Jericho was trying to make peace with his teammates or whatever, and he gives them both presents. They open them up, and Jericho has gifted both of them some nice scarves, and Seth Rollins is like, I don't wear scarves, fuck off, and he walks away. And Braun Strowman is like, I want the one on your neck, I want that scarf. And I really like Braun Strowman. He's a lot funnier than I was expecting him to be. So Chris Jericho was like, what are you talking about? It's like $7,000. And then he's like, okay, fine, whatever, you can have my scarf, and he gives it to Braun, and then Braun just tears it up. And Jericho ends up taking the one that he was going to give to Braun Strowman, which has little anchors on it and shit like that. The MVP of this Monday Night Raw easily was Kevin Owens. I mean, Chris Jericho was always pretty damn funny, and he was extremely funny in the main event segment, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Kevin Owens had so many great moments on this show. I mentioned that him and Roman Reigns defeated Cesaro and Sheamus. Did you guys see the photo bomb or the video bomb or whatever that was all over Twitter? I posted a screenshot of it, and it's just a camera shot of them showing Roman Reigns, and Kevin Owens kind of sneaks in the background and holds out the title, and it's so brilliant. Kevin Owens is so funny. I love his sense of humor. Even during the match, he just kind of had his chin on the ring ropes, and he was bored, and he really looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but being a tag team partner with Roman Reigns, which was pretty funny. Then he had some pretty damn hilarious things to say in the main event segment as well. But getting back to Jericho, I know we're bouncing around here, but him and Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman did beat the New Day. Strowman was really impressive. Had a really nasty powerbomb finish on Xavier Woods. He even tossed Kofi around on the outside like an absolute boss. The guy was pretty awesome. The match that was made in an attempt to create solidarity between these guys did not work. After the match, Seth Rollins wound up pedigreeing Chris Jericho, but I have a lot of good feelings about Braun Strowman. I just think maybe, just maybe, he could actually become a star. He's just been impressing me lately. Was not really a fan of him at first, just with the squashes, very Ryback-like, the goofy-ass intro music that he has with the big roar at the beginning. But he's growing on me, and I've liked some of the things he's been doing so far, and I'm really excited to see how he's going to perform in that 10-man tag at Survivor Series, and I will talk about him when I do my predictions later on. Now, back to the main event segment that I talked about. Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon, of course, were invited to Monday Night Raw by Stephanie and Mick Foley, and they would be invited out to close out the show. And they would go back and forth, trading insults a little bit. Daniel Bryan and Mick Foley had a little bit of a heated exchange, and it would become even worse later on when they would do the State of the WWE Network special, which apparently they advertised during Raw, and I somehow missed it. Had no idea the thing was even taking place until the very next day, so I watched most of it, watched a little bit of the interview with Paul Heyman, and I watched the interaction between the two GMs and the two commissioners, and it did get a little bit heated. There was a lot of shouting, a lot of arguing, and it felt a little shootish, which was kind of nice. Foley and Bryan did a really good job of making you think that these two guys are really annoyed with each other, so it got pretty heated, and I liked it, and I thought it was good stuff. But getting back to the big confrontation now, after Mick and Stephanie and Shane and Daniel trade some insults, Mick and Steph bring out the entire Raw team. And then they leave. They're like, okay, guys, see you later. And they kind of surround Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon, and it was so predictable. I even tweeted out, as soon as Stephanie and Mick walked away, I tweeted something to the effect of, now they're going to say, what, you thought we came without backup or something like that, right? And not 5 seconds later, Daniel Bryan gets on the mic and says, you didn't think we came alone, did you? Exactly the way I predicted. And of course, the SmackDown team then comes through the crowd, jumps over the barricade, and gets in the ring, and you got a big face-off. And that was awesome because you had Kevin Owens and AJ Styles, the two champions, face to face. They both cut promos on each other, and Kevin Owens won. I have been so happy with AJ Styles and his run in the WWE. I love him being WWE champion. He has impressed the hell out of me, and I think he is money, 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 money. And he's pretty damn good on the mic, but he's not Kevin Owens. And I think Kevin Owens definitely won that exchange between the two. And I can't wait to see what kind of a confrontation they're going to have in that 10-man tag. So that was kind of cool. A lot of guys had a chance to talk. Chris Jericho, of course. Jericho has been the best thing on Raw every week. I think this week Kevin Owens beat him out by just a little bit because of what he said in that promo and some of the other funny things he did on Monday Night Raw. Even him and Jericho shared the scarf, remember? And in the ring there, and Kevin Owens grabs part of it and wraps it around his neck and flips it behind him. It was fucking great. I mean, I was just laughing my ass off during that. But Jericho put a bunch of people on the list, including James Ellsworth, who's standing at ringside. He showed up for this thing, too. Jericho said that there's a lost child at ringside and his parents need to come pick him up. And then wound up putting Ellsworth on the list, which just looked like it devastated Ellsworth. I mean, he's such a nice guy. He doesn't deserve to be on that list. I felt so bad for him. And then finally things come to a head when Dean grabs the microphone and he starts doing this weird pacing thing, which looks stupid, in between the two groups and then just attacks Raw, and the brawl is on. And what was funny about this And what was so hilarious about this Raw and what helped make the show pretty good was the crowd. The crowd was awesome for the show, including the end, which was so funny that they basically turned heel on Monday Night Raw. They were rooting for the SmackDown guys to win. Even in the promo earlier with Shane and Daniel Bryan and Stephanie McFoley, the crowd was basically booing Raw and agreeing that SmackDown was the better show. So I thought that was a really nice twist that the WWE needs to take in consideration. It's not like you have Raw fans and SmackDown fans and they're not a fan of the other show. We all watch both shows. It's so stupid. I like that they're creating competition, but I find it really hard to believe that there's fans out there that only watch Raw and don't watch SmackDown or vice versa. That's stupid. So the crowd is going to cheer whoever, they hate the least in the ring. And Roman Reigns is on Team Raw, so they're not going to cheer for him. So naturally, they were going to go with Team SmackDown. Plus, Daniel Bryan is super over, like he always is. So is Shane McMahon. The two of them are more over than Stephanie and McFoley for sure. And I think the SmackDown team might just be a tiny bit more likable. Raw's got Owens and Jericho, but I don't think that was enough to keep the crowd on their side, and they totally turned on Monday Night Raw, which I think was one of the funniest parts of the whole show. But Raw wound up winning the battle. They fought off Team SmackDown, and Seth and Roman Reigns gave AJ Styles the old Shield powerbomb over the top rope on top of the rest of the SmackDown team, and they all fall down and retreat, and Monday Night Raw stands tall. So, I'll get into my predictions later on, but the way Raw ended makes me think that SmackDown might take that match. I think whatever they do at Survivor Series, it's going to be very even-steven. It's going to be very 50-50. Raw's going to win a couple of things. SmackDown is going to win a couple of things, to where at the end of it, both brands basically save face, and both brands can make an argument that they're the best, and nothing really at the end of the day was ever settled. As far as what else we saw on Raw, let me just blow through some of the other results. Sami Zayn had a tune-up match. Because at the time of Raw's airing, he thought he was going to be taking on Dolph Ziggler for the Intercontinental title, but that will not be the case now. We'll talk about that when we discuss SmackDown here in a bit. I mentioned the women's tag team match that they made earlier on. Sasha Banks and Charlotte did defeat Fox and Jax. I like the sound of that. It has a nice ring to it. They could be a tag team. Bayley was on commentary, and she came out and kind of raised both her hands and all of that, so that was what it was. Enzo and Cass were forced to team up with Gallows and Anderson for much the same reason. They beat the Shining Stars and Golden Truth. Gallows kind of stole the pin from Enzo when he was going to go for the top rope splash, and he just jumped on top and took the pin. Brian Kendrick cut a promo in front of the entire Cruiserweight roster backstage. I like Brian Kendrick. I think he's got good charisma. He's good on the mic. The crowd, for some reason, doesn't seem to give a shit about him. And I think we might have seen the last of the Cruiserweight division on Monday Night Raw. He had a match with Sin Cara, who is Kalisto's former tag team partner. So that's kind of Brian Kendrick's little tune-up. He made Sin Cara tap out, and he'll be going on to Survivor Series to face Kalisto, and I will talk much in detail about that Cruiserweight match later on. Now on to the big segment of the night, which took place at the top of the second hour, I believe, and that was the big face-to-face confrontation between Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. Now, Paul Heyman had approached Mick Foley and Stephanie backstage earlier on, and basically made Mick Foley very nervous that they might not make it to Survivor Series because both these guys might kill each other tonight. So Mick Foley calls in for a shit ton of security, and Brock Lesnar comes out first, and they literally build a wall diagonally right down the middle of the ring to separate Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. Goldberg then comes out. He's standing on the other side of the security, and the crowd is going nuts, by the way, and Paul Heyman begins to cut his promo and to talk all the usual shit that he always does, and Bill Goldberg shuts him right down. He says, "Shut your fat face. I'm here to talk to Brock. We don't need to hear from you." And then at one point gets so mad at Paul Heyman, who keeps saying things like, "Tell your children not to watch, tell your wife not to watch." And he's like, "Look, motherfucker, you mention my family one more time, I'm going to bust through the security wall and rip your fucking head off and feed it to Brock Lesnar." Bill Goldberg cut an amazing promo. How did this guy get good on the mic all of a sudden? He never had any mic skills before. He takes 12 years off and suddenly he knows what he's doing, and he seemed to have developed a southern accent out of nowhere. I know he was born in Oklahoma and lived in Atlanta for some time, but he lives in California now. I don't know where the southern accent came from, but it sounded great. I mean, he was mad, he was pissed, and look at the shape he was in. Holy shit. Which really made me feel good, because one thing I was worried about is that it would be a mismatch. Goldberg was going to look old and slow and worn out and all that, but Goldberg doesn't look like that at all. He has gotten himself in amazing shape. It was so cool how well the crowd was cooperating too, because we saw how badly it backfired when they were in Minnesota a few weeks back when the crowd was booing Goldberg. I'm glad it was just Minnesota because they were chanting their asses off for him. They really wanted to see Goldberg get his hands on either Paul Heyman or Brock Lesnar. And when he was threatening Paul Heyman, I mean, Paul sold it beautifully. It's the little things that I like. You know, when he told Paul Heyman that he was going to rip his head off, Heyman just his eyes kind of opened a little bit, and he just took a couple of steps back and basically hid behind Brock Lesnar. And it was just like, wow, you could see the fear in his eyes. And I felt it, and I liked it. Finally, after a little bit more nonsense, I think Brock pushes a couple of the security guards out of the way, and they never really get into it. Goldberg fights off all the security guards who are trying to keep him from Brock Lesnar. Brock steps out of the ring. Goldberg eventually disposes of everybody, and I was a little bit worried about some botches there. I'm like, oh God, Goldberg, please don't fall down or look stupid. This whole segment has been so good so far. Don't fuck it up by not being able to do any of these moves on these guys. But he did everything just fine and got everybody out of the way. And then stood there and basically called out Brock Lesnar, come on, big man, get in the ring, let's face off, or let's get it on, as Goldberg likes to say. And Brock teases it, gets up on the ring apron, puts one foot in the ring, but ultimately takes his foot out and walks away. We all know Brock doesn't wrestle on Raw. So Brock kind of retreats, and Goldberg stands in the ring, tall, and I think he might have had some family at ringside again because he was pointing to him and smiling and all of that. So Goldberg looked pretty good. I'm still not sure what kind of a match we're going to have between these two guys, but I have to say the shape that Goldberg was in, the way the crowd reacted to the segment, I've got hopes that maybe this match won't suck. I mean, it's a big maybe. I think at the very least the crowd will be into it, although it is Toronto, you never know with those fuckers. But given how well that segment came off in the final confrontation and the fact that this build could have sucked, but it really didn't, I think gives the match hope and promise, and I'm expecting to see some big things out of these two guys. I mean, hell, they're getting a big enough payday, so they better come through in the end. And we'll talk about some of my ideas for how that match might go down later on in the predictions. Moving on to SmackDown now. They also had their go-home show. This was the 900th episode of SmackDown. Throughout the night, they showed clips of all the most famous SmackDown moments and great matches and things that happened. Really nice to kind of reminisce on how long SmackDown has been around now. They started in, August of 99? So it's been 17 years they've been on the air. Pretty amazing. Now, this show wasn't without its share of great moments either. Now, Shane and Daniel Bryan opened the show to kind of announce what was going to be happening and the return of Edge and The Undertaker. Edge was going to be having the Cutting Edge talk show segment with the entire SmackDown team, and we really didn't know when we were going to see Undertaker. We just knew that we were. The biggest match of the night, of course, was the Intercontinental title match that was advertised since last week between The Miz and Dolph Ziggler. The winner of this will go on to face Sami Zayn at the Survivor Series for the title. And The Miz won the title back. I couldn't believe it. I thought that Dolph Ziggler would be a lot more fun to see go in there at Survivor Series and face Sami Zayn. But The Miz won the belt back with some help from Maurice, as she, I think, kind of reversed a small package or a pinning combination, kind of pushed over The Miz, so he was now on top of Dolph Ziggler, and the ref counted 3. The Spirit Squad was out there to celebrate with The Miz, and he won back the Intercontinental title. So I was a little bit surprised there. I don't know what this means for Dolph now. I'm wondering if maybe Dolph snaps because he's been fucked over so many times, especially by Maurice. She's done some other things like sprayed him in the eyes with that shit a couple of times to cost him some matches, and now this. So maybe he snaps and goes nuts and completely loses his mind and becomes broken, and he joins the Spirit Squad. You know, much like Randy Orton joined the Wyatt family, I think maybe Dolph could go a little bit out of his mind and go back to his cheerleading days. I think might be kind of funny. So look for something like that. Otherwise, I don't know what they're going to do with poor Dolph. We had Kalisto winning a tune-up match and maybe giving the SmackDown audience a little taste of what the Cruiserweight division will be like when it comes to SmackDown, but he defeated an NXT guy named Oney Lorcan. I haven't seen much of him, but the match, was okay, and I like Kalisto. I actually really hope he wins the belt. The SmackDown Tag Team Squad needed some help to get on the same page as well. They're all backstage, and King Booker shows up to give them a big motivational speech. Breezango showed up in their cop outfits. I guess they're the fashion police, and they don't like what Booker T was wearing or whatever. Breezango, Jesus Christ, those guys. Later on, that led to a match with the Hype Bros, American Alpha, the Usos, and Breezango. They defeated the Ascension, the Spirit Squad, the Headbangers, and the Vaudevillains in a tune-up match. Heath Slater and Rhino were at ringside for that. Nikki Bella took on Carmella in a one-on-one match. Now, I like this because Charlotte showed up. She came through the crowd with her Raw t-shirt and her women's title belt. She's got a ticket. She sat right in the front row, which was kind of cool. Nikki tries to continue her match with Carmella, winds up on the outside of the ring, and then just nails Charlotte with a vicious forearm and drags her over the barricade and starts kicking her ass. And then the rest of the Raw team shows up, and there's a big brawl with them and the SmackDown girls. So I like that whole segment there. That should be a fun match to watch at Survivor Series, and I got a few interesting predictions in that match as well. And then, of course, we've got the main event segment, the return of Edge. He's hosting the Cutting Edge. He comes out there to an awesome entrance. He seemed really into it. He's grown his hair back long again and the beard. And incidentally, for those of you who don't know, I just reviewed his DVD documentary on my YouTube channel just a few days ago. The link is right there on the screen and in the description. And go to my YouTube page and you can find it if you have not yet seen it. I thought it would be a lot of fun to kind of reminisce on his career, given the fact that he would be making an appearance on this episode. And he got the old school ring introduction from Tony Chimmel. It was awesome. So great to see Edge back. He brings out the entire SmackDown team and puts over James Ellsworth, making it like he was honored to be in the same ring with AJ Styles and he wanted to shake his hand, but then goes over and shakes Ellsworth's hand instead. AJ cut a pretty cool promo too, and it was awesome to see him and Edge in the ring because those two guys have really never crossed paths. You know, Edge has been in WWE his whole career. I'm sure they've met a time or two, but as far as them doing anything together ever, I don't think they have. So it was kind of cool to see them interact for the first time. There's still a ton of tension between Dean Ambrose and AJ Styles as well, and they get into it a little bit. And finally, that leads to the appearance of The Undertaker. The lights go out. He comes to the ring, his long 10-minute entrance, and gets in there and basically says that he's back. Taking souls and digging holes, I think is what he said. So I don't know if he's back, or if he's just back for a little while. I mean, this is a guy that we thought was going to retire 2 or 3 years ago, and now he's back again. So I don't know what this is going to mean, and I don't know what kind of effect he's going to have, if any, at the Survivor Series. But he basically went on to tell Team SmackDown that SmackDown has always been his show. Him and Edge both were a huge part of SmackDown back in the day. And he basically warned the entire SmackDown team that if they don't win, it's going to be their ass. So I'll get into some ideas of how Undertaker could tie into this main event later on in the predictions, or up here in a minute in the predictions, that is. And I don't know if he's even going to appear. I just think maybe his warning could be something for the future. So we'll get into that here now as we talk about the predictions. But overall, SmackDown was a pretty solid show. I watched a little bit of Talking Smack and saw a little bit of what Edge had to say. I was just so happy to see him and The Undertaker back on SmackDown. And at the same time, they were in the ring together, two guys that main evented WrestleMania. It was kind of cool to see Edge and Randy Orton have a little face-to-face in the ring as well. And Bray Wyatt was like, this is not the Randy Orton you remember. He's with me now. So Randy Orton could be another guy that could play a big role in the outcome of this main event. Let's move on now and predict the Survivor Series. But first, let's predict NXT TAKEOVER, which comes to us Saturday night, the night before Survivor Series, also from Toronto, also from the Air Canada Centre. I've got 5 matches written down here. Now, I haven't watched a whole lot of NXT in the past couple of months, so I'm not quite sure where a lot of the storyline directions are going. So I'll do my best to predict these matches, and there's even a small chance, very small chance, that I might actually be home on Saturday to watch this show live. I really hope I'm able to do that. If I am, I will be up live tweeting and reacting to it on Twitter throughout the show. And if there's time, maybe I can come up here and give a few thoughts on it, maybe a 10 or 15 minute video reacting to TakeOver. If not, I'll definitely talk about it when I do my Survivor Series reaction video after the pay-per-view on Sunday. But as far as the matches that I have written down, we've got Ty Dillinger taking on Bobby Roode. I would assume this would be our opener. Bobby Roode has got that big epic entrance. He came into the WWE with a lot of anticipation, and a lot of people are thinking that he's going to be moved up into that main event tier once they, maybe put Samoa Joe on the main roster or whatever. So I have no reason to think that Ty Dillinger will wind up beating Bobby Roode here. So I predict Bobby Roode to win that. Should be pretty cool to see a crowd that big all singing his theme song. I can't wait to see that. They've been doing the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic tournament again. We're down to the finals in that. We've got the Authors of Pain taking on TM61. I'm not too familiar with these guys. I think I saw a little bit of footage of them when I was watching some NXT stuff on YouTube one night. It's Shane Thorne and Nick Miller. Am I right about that? They're taking on Authors of Pain in the finals of this thing. Paul Ellering will actually be suspended above the ring in a shark cage, which is very 80s and very appropriate for him. I think that's pretty cool. I have no reason to think that the Authors of Pain winning streak could end here. I predict them to easily win this thing and keeping their momentum going and becoming a huge part of the tag team division on NXT. Speaking of the tag team division, the tag team titles are on the line. 2 out of 3 falls match with the Revival taking on Gargano and Ciampa. I guess the Revival would be ripe here. I mean, they've been on top for a long time in NXT. They've had several of these 2 out of 3 falls matches with other teams. They're multi-time NXT Tag Team Champions. I don't know what's going on with the other two guys. They put up a great performance in the Cruiserweight Classic. I wasn't sure if they were going to go singles or if they were going to remain a team for a while, but I'm thinking I'm going to predict them. Gargano and Ciampa to take the titles here. I don't see any reason why not. Give them the belts. The Revival have had a nice run, and maybe they can be moved up to the main roster now that they've been on top for quite a while in NXT. So I predict some new champs. Mickie James is also getting a title shot. She's returning to the WWE to challenge Asuka for the NXT Women's title. Asuka all the way here. I love her. She is just awesome. So as much as I'm happy to see Mickie James back, she's an old veteran who can be used to put people over. I see no reason for her to upset Asuka and win the NXT title. So Asuka all the way to retain there. Same goes with Shinsuke Nakamura. I predict he'll retain over Samoa Joe. Would seem weird to put the belt back on Joe at this point, especially when you would think one or both of them should be moved up to the main roster very soon, and I think that person will be Samoa Joe. It is possible after this pay-per-view that, you know, somebody could show up at Survivor Series even and make an appearance or do a run-in or cost a team something. But I think maybe with Samoa Joe holding him off to like Royal Rumble or something like that might be best. So overall, I think NXT is going to be a fabulous show. It always is. I expect all these matches to be pretty damn good. And I'm really excited to see it. I love these big pay-per-view weekends. You know, the Royal Rumbles and the Summer Slams and Survivor Series and Manias and stuff where you have that NXT show the night before. I just love that. Love it, love it, love it. So I'm looking forward to that. And why don't we move on now to the Survivor Series pay-per-view coming up on Sunday. Why don't we start right with the big 5-on-5 match? That's going to be tough. You've got Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Chris Jericho, Braun Strowman, and Roman Reigns taking on AJ Styles, Dean Ambrose, Shane McMahon, Bray Wyatt, and Broken Randy Orton. Now, whoever's going to go over in this match, it's going to be shady or something like that, I would imagine. I wouldn't even rule out a defection of some kind. So I've got a couple of different predictions for you. I'll settle on one, but I've got a couple of ideas. At first, I was thinking Raw would win the main event, but given how Raw kind of ran off SmackDown at the end of Raw, it would make me think that SmackDown might win the 5-on-5 match somehow. So looking at it from SmackDown's perspective, if they were to win this match, I think it would have to be something like maybe a defection from Raw. What about Roman Reigns turning heel or something like that? Maybe not turning heel, but maybe going over to SmackDown. What if earlier on in the night, Sami Zayn wins the Intercontinental title from The Miz and takes the Intercontinental title over to Monday Night Raw? I don't really think Raw needs the Intercontinental title and the U.S. title. Those two belts, I think it's a must that they are separated. So if Sami Zayn does happen to win the Intercontinental title, maybe you could have Roman Reigns defect and join SmackDown somehow. And now you got the U.S. belt over on SmackDown. For me, I can't really see any other way that SmackDown can possibly win this thing unless Jericho and Kevin Owens have some sort of issues in the match or something goes wrong or the Raw team just simply cannot get along with each other. That's the only way I can really see SmackDown getting a victory in this thing. It's just what took place on Monday Night Raw that makes me think that they might. Now, looking at it from Raw's perspective, they're the team I'm going to predict in this thing. I'm actually going to predict Monday Night Raw to win the 5-on-5. And I think maybe if you think about what The Undertaker said in his promo, he said, if you guys don't win, I'm coming for you. Now, the Royal Rumble is right around the corner. The Undertaker is back, apparently. You would think he needs to have a match in this big stadium with 60,000 people there. And we heard the rumors possibly of maybe Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement to take on AJ Styles. I don't think that will happen. But if you want to have The Undertaker in a really, really good match, and a match that could possibly be as good as his matches with Shawn Michaels, who is the next best opponent for him other than Shawn Michaels that's currently on SmackDown? It could be the WWE Champion, AJ Styles. He's going to have his TLC match with Dean next month and most likely retain, and then he's going to need an opponent for the Royal Rumble. So what about AJ Styles versus The Undertaker in Texas at the Royal Rumble for the WWE title? Now, looking way ahead, John Cena could have a big effect on that match in two different ways. Undertaker could number one, defeat AJ Styles and become the WWE champion and go into WrestleMania to drop it to John Cena and retire, giving The Undertaker a send-off on his amazing career and having John Cena tie Ric Flair's record for the most titles won or whatever. They could go in that direction. Or they could have John Cena come and interfere in the AJ Styles-Undertaker match because he doesn't want Taker to win the belt. He wants the belt for himself and costs The Undertaker the title, leading to a match between The Undertaker and John Cena at WrestleMania with no belt on the line. Maybe John Cena can have a title match between then and WrestleMania with AJ and wind up coming up short or whatever. And AJ can still go into WrestleMania as the champion to face somebody completely different. So I think if if Raw were to win, it will be just because they are the better team. Maybe James Ellsworth could turn heel. We all been wondering what the hell they're going to do with that kid. Or maybe he won't even turn heel. Maybe he'll just do something and fuck up and cost SmackDown the match. But one thing I will say about AJ, however, I mentioned this in one of my previous commentaries, is that I actually think he's going to pin and eliminate Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens eliminated AJ from the Royal Rumble when he first debuted. I think this could be a nice receipt. Plus, Kevin Owens kind of got the better of AJ on the mic on Monday Night Raw. It would be nice to see AJ get his revenge on Kevin Owens and eliminate him. Possibly a miscue with Jericho involved. It doesn't have to be totally clean or anything like that. But I think AJ will give Kevin Owens a receipt and wind up pinning him. If Raw does win this match, I think one of the survivors needs to be Braun Strowman at this point. I mean, I was thinking before they would eliminate him by having him brawl with Bray Wyatt because they don't want to pin Strowman or they don't want to do anything to make him look weak in this match. So if he's going to get eliminated, he's going to have to get counted out, disqualified, something like that. So I envision maybe him and Luke Harper or him and both of the Wyatt family members brawling outside of the ring, maybe even spilling into the crowd and just going away, and Bray and Braun both wind up getting counted out or disqualified or whatever. Randy Orton is another wild card in this thing. He could finally turn on Bray Wyatt and end up helping Raw win the match, which could be another reason why they could win. Randy Orton's very unstable. We don't know what the hell's going on in his head. Eventually, you would think he's going to come to his senses and turn on Bray Wyatt, so Survivor Series could be a good time for that. Whatever winds up happening in this match, I think we need to see some sort of a swerve. I don't think it's just going to be a straight-up match with one survivor or one team winning or anything like that. There's got to be some sort of a twist in here somewhere. Somebody's got to jump, somebody's got to debut, somebody's got to interfere. You know, I mentioned Roman Reigns possibly defecting. I mean, think about it. Right now on Raw, he's not working with anybody. His feud with Rusev is over. He won that feud. Rusev's, becoming a joke slowly on Monday Night Raw. I don't even think he's booked for this fucking pay-per-view. So Roman has nobody to work with right now. He's got no ties to Monday Night Raw. If he were to jump over to SmackDown, this would be the perfect opportunity if they wanted to flip the titles and have the U.S. on SmackDown like it used to be back in the day, and the Intercontinental title on Raw. So just to recap, the only way I see SmackDown winning is if you get a defection from the other side. Otherwise, I think Raw is going to take this match. I think it's possible that you could have like Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman be the two survivors. It's possible that Braun Strowman could survive this whole thing by himself. If you think about it, that's what they should do. Everybody else in the match, they're established. They've been building Braun Strowman and Nia Jax, for that matter. They should do the same thing with Nia later on. They've been putting him in all these squash matches and building him and building him and building him. You got to have a payoff somewhere, right? You got to make a statement that this guy is a main part of the roster. And if he winds up being the sole survivor in this match, you got a brand new star on your hands. So I used to think that Braun Strowman was just going to get eliminated in a shitty way. Now I'm starting to think he's going to survive. So I do, at the end of the day, predict Raw to win this match. It's a very shaky prediction. I think it could easily go the other way. But right now, I'm taking Raw. As far as the women go, we've got Sasha Banks, Charlotte, Bayley, Alicia Fox, and Nia Jax on the Raw side, taking on Becky Lynch, Nikki Bella, Alexa Bliss, Carmella, and Naomi. Now, I think SmackDown is going to win this. Yeah, I do. I think Raw is the stronger team. I think Raw should win. Just the way the matches are balancing out, because another thing you have to think about is that one brand is not going to win all the matches. It's going to be about as evenly split as you can get. So that's going into my thought process here when I pick the SmackDown women to win. Plus, the SmackDown title is new. It would be nice to establish its dominance and make it seem like it's as important as the one that Charlotte is currently wearing on Monday Night Raw. So I think overall, the women taking this match for SmackDown would help SmackDown more than it would help Raw. And I think what we're going to wind up seeing, Nikki Bella is going to wind up eliminating Charlotte. You watch. Nikki Bella will pin and eliminate Charlotte, I promise you, because Charlotte has owned Nikki Bella. Remember their feud when she took the belt off of her, the Divas division and all of that? So now that Charlotte is a dirty, bitchy heel and Nikki is the babyface, I think Nikki's going to get her hands on her, and I think Nikki is going to eliminate her. Mark my words. I mentioned Braun Strowman surviving for the men's team. I would like to see the same thing happen with Nia Jax, but I'm picking SmackDown, so I really think that Nia is going to have to get eliminated, much like I suggested they eliminate Braun Strowman, and she's got to do something on the outside of the ring. She's been spearing people through the barricades a lot lately. I think on SmackDown she even missed So maybe she does that, and she goes head first through something, and she's laying there and she gets counted out. Whatever they do with Nia, they should eliminate her without having to have her get pinned or look like shit or something like that. So I think at the end of the day, SmackDown is going to wind up winning. I say Nikki Bella and Becky Lynch are the two survivors for SmackDown. Now, I'm going to give Raw, I think, the tag team match, although, again, I'm scared to predict this because I think SmackDown should win, and I think the sole surviving team should be American Alpha. Back in the day, when Survivor Series first started, a lot of these big tag team matches were won by young, up-and-coming tag teams. I think the Killer Bees and the Young Stallions had won maybe the first year. The Powers of Pain, who were new onto the scene at that time, won the following year. The Jumping Bomb Angels won on the women's side of things back in like 87 when they were new onto the scene. So I think the Survivor Series 10-man tag could be a perfect opportunity to get American Alpha over and maybe have them pin the New Day or something like that. Maybe have them beat Kofi or Xavier or something like that in the finish and have them be the sole survivors. However, I think that Raw needs to win another match here, so I'm going to give them the tag team match. I don't know how. I don't know who's going to be the sole survivors. Preferably, it would be Gallows and Anderson, but most likely it would be New Day, perhaps. But I'm reluctantly picking Raw, and the only reason I'm really picking Raw in this match is because of the balance of the winners and the losers here. There is a very good chance that SmackDown could win. I could probably be wrong, but because of some of my other ideas, I'm sticking with Raw as my prediction there. So Raw will take the 20-man tag. Now on to the 3 singles matches. I only have 6 matches total written down, which is probably about right because a lot of these matches are going to be very long. So 6 sounds about right, but we've got The Miz defending the Intercontinental title against Sami Zayn. Now originally when this match was announced, or that Sami Zayn was getting the opportunity, I was thinking to myself, well, they wouldn't even make this match if they weren't planning on moving the Intercontinental title to Raw. But now I'm thinking maybe that was just a cover for them to move the Cruiserweight title to SmackDown. So I'm going to predict The Miz. I would love to see Sami Zayn actually win the Intercontinental title and jump ship over to SmackDown. That would be great. That would be the most ideal way to do it. But if they did it that way, why did they even bother putting the belt on Miz to begin with? If they were going to give Sami Zayn the belt, just have him beat Ziggler for it. Why The Miz? So that makes me think that something's got to happen here. Somebody's got to move around. The Miz has got to go to Raw or something like that. The Miz might be very good on Raw if he wound up going over there. I don't know how they pull that off. But still, I'm going to predict The Miz to win. I think the IC belt needs to stay on SmackDown. There is no reason for it to leave. If you put it over on Raw, you're going to devalue both that and the US belt, and that seems completely fucking stupid. So, as much as I'd love to see Sami Zayn with a belt around his waist, I got to predict him to lose in this match. The Miz will retain the Intercontinental title and defeat Sami Zayn, keeping the belt on the SmackDown brand. Now, that will not be the case for the Cruiserweight title. Bye-bye, Raw. See you later. We're going somewhere else and going somewhere where we can be a little bit more appreciated, hopefully. And I definitely am predicting 100% Kalisto to defeat Brian Kendrick. Kalisto is the perfect embodiment of the Cruiserweight division. He's a little miniature Rey Mysterio. I know he sucks on the mic. I know he can't cut a promo. He does that great lucha thing, or whatever he said. So I know he's got some mic issues, but he's a hell of a little talent. I loved when he was the U.S. champion and having his matches with Alberto Del Rio. I think he's in a division where he needs to be. Why they drafted him over to SmackDown when the Cruiserweight division was on Raw to begin with, I have no idea. Brian Kendrick, as much as I love him, I don't think he's that over. So Kalisto winning the title, I think, is probably the most likely option there, moving the entire Cruiserweight division to SmackDown, which I think it will thrive there. Plus, it has that show that's going to be immediately following SmackDown every week, that 205 Live or whatever. So it's the right move to be made. It's a business move that they should have done all along. They should have never put the Cruiserweight division on Raw. I think a lot of us were saying that. I said from the minute that was announced that it made no sense. But going over to SmackDown, I think it's going to mean big things for the Cruiserweight title. And I am rooting hard for Kalisto to win this, and I'm predicting him to. Brock Lesnar versus Bill Goldberg. What the fuck is going to happen in this match? This is a tough one to predict. I'm trying to think of all the things they could do because you got to think about the future implications on both of these guys going forward. Brock Lesnar is going to have to do something huge at WrestleMania. You would think Bill Goldberg, same thing, at least the Royal Rumble. I can't see Goldberg coming in just for one match with Brock and then leaving. I see a couple of different options here. One thing I cannot see happening is Brock's shoulders being pinned to the mat. I do not think Goldberg, of all people, needs to be the guy to accomplish that. That has got to be reserved for someone else. So Brock Lesnar needs to come out of this match staying as strong as a monster as he ever was, regardless of the outcome here. So how do they do that? How do they pull that off? I think maybe Brock wins. by cheating hardcore. Maybe he is surprised by the fight that Goldberg is putting up. Goldberg keeps surviving a couple of Germans and a jackhammer and kicks out and kicks out and kicks out, and Brock doesn't know what else to do. Maybe the referee gets knocked out and Brock gets nasty, wraps a chain around his hand and starts punching Goldberg in the head, hits him with a steel chair, does something to finally put away Bill Goldberg and erase that blemish on his career, but I can't see him doing it clean. Unless they do some sort of a finish like SummerSlam, unless he's just pounding Goldberg into the mat and he starts bleeding and the referee stops it. But that fell a little flat at SummerSlam. I don't think a lot of fans were that thrilled with the finish. So I don't think they want to do something like that again because the fans might get pissed, especially the Toronto fans. So I think we either have to see some sort of a draw or some sort of a no decision. Something goes down where no winner is declared. Maybe both guys are knocked out. Neither guy can answer a 10 count, something like that. And it's just a total draw and a schmoz. And it leads, perhaps, at the Royal Rumble to a loser leaves WWE match. And maybe Brock goes into the Royal Rumble and beats Goldberg there. And then Goldberg is retired and he goes on to WrestleMania to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. I can't see Goldberg winning this match. I mean, normally when a guy who hasn't been around in 12 years returns to the company, they're going to win their return match. But if you do that, that means Brock Lesnar is down 0-2, which means he'll probably never climb out of that hole. So it's really hard to figure this thing out. Now, I suppose Goldberg could somehow win, maybe win in a shady way as well, really pissing off Brock Lesnar, and that could still lead to a loser leaves WWE match at the Royal Rumble. But I think whatever they do here cannot be the end of the story, can it? I mean, regardless of who wins, how can this be the total end of it? Especially if Brock Lesnar has to wind up cheating to win or something like that. What if Goldberg wins in some weird fluke? And Brock Lesnar, he's going to be pissed off about it. Paul Heyman's going to be shitting his pants. They're going to be demanding a rematch or something like that. So I think there's a really good chance these two guys work again following this match. But that doesn't give you a prediction, does it? You still need a prediction on who I think is going to win this match. So I'm going to say Brock Lesnar. I'm just going to say Brock. Unfortunately, I have no idea how they're going to be able to pull this off. But at the end of the day, Brock Lesnar, I think, has got to get his hand raised here, even though I can see a side of it that doesn't make sense. A lot of my predictions don't. So I've got Team Raw winning the 5-on-5 match and the 20-man tag. I've got Team SmackDown winning the women's match, the Intercontinental match, and the Cruiserweight match. That seems like a nice balance. Raw only wins 2 matches, where SmackDown wins 3. However, Raw wins arguably the bigger match with all the main eventers involved. So I think that's a nice balance. Before I get out of here, just a couple of other things I want to mention briefly. Joey Styles was let go, I think, from Evolve, and somebody else, I think, has severed ties with him, too. He made some sort of a Donald Trump joke or talked about the ring announcer or a women's wrestler, and if the president was here, he would grab their pussy or something like that. I don't know. But he got fired for that little comment. So I don't know. Joey Styles, I don't really have any sympathy for him. I really don't care about him one way or the other. Vader is also in the news. He tweeted out that apparently a couple of doctors have told him that he has 2 years to live, and congestive heart failure is inevitable and he should start preparing for it. Now, when I saw this, I was incredibly saddened because Vader is one of my favorite guys ever, especially for a big man. Why he is not in the WWE Hall of Fame yet, I have no idea. They should maybe think about putting him in if this is in fact true. But at the same time, Vader's crazy. And if any of you follow him on Twitter, you read some of the shit that he tweets, and it's extremely incoherent. I don't think the guy knows how to type or spell or anything. I understand that he's a big guy and has giant fingers, so sometimes his fingers are probably hitting the wrong keys and things like that, but sometimes he just tweets gibberish. And he always argues with fans. He seems like he can be very easily baited into an argument. You know, he had all that heat with Will Ospreay, and he had the match, and that didn't even go very well because Vader wanted to win or whatever. So he's always just running his mouth. He's always arguing with people, and I just don't like to see that because it comes off as so immature. Vader is a legend. He is a legendary, well-traveled pro wrestler that has been everywhere and done everything. He has no reason to argue with a Twitter egg. And every time he opens his mouth on Twitter, it sounds dumb most of the time. I hate to say that. So one thing that I'm actually holding out hope for is maybe he's exaggerating. I really hope that maybe he's just saying this to get attention. I really hope that his health is not that bad. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. I mean, he's a very big guy and he's getting up there in age. And when you're that big and that old, heart problems tend to be a reality. So to me, it sounds legit. I hardly think he's lying about this. I'm just hoping that maybe he's exaggerating. In 5 years from now, we're still going to have Vader with us. That's what I really hope. So endless positive vibes being sent out to Vader. I really hope that he's okay and he can live out the rest of his life comfortably and a lot longer than he is expecting to, because Vader was one of the best, man. Young folks out there don't get to see or don't remember much of Vader. Look up some of his stuff from WCW and Japan. Some of his WWE stuff too, but before he came to WWE, I think it was when he was at his best. And he was so agile. He could do moonsaults and shit. And this guy's 400 pounds, an incredible athlete and a great pro wrestler. Not too many big guys like him know how to work. You think about guys, one-man gang, Bundy. I mean, they understood how to work. I'm not saying they don't know how to be a professional wrestler, but as far as making the match good, being believable, and telling stories in the ring, none of those guys came even close to Vader. Bam Bam Bigelow was another guy that I thought was just awesome and agile for his size. But Vader pretty much is apart from everybody, former world champion, and my heart goes out to him, no pun intended. So anyway, get well soon, Vader. We all love you, and best of wishes to you, my man. So that is it for me tonight. I'm out of here. Like I said, join me on Twitter for Survivor Series and let me know all of your predictions in the comments below. And I will talk to you late Sunday night after the Survivor Series pay-per-view. Have a great rest of your week. Until next time. Peace.